Hello, and welcome to F1 Into the Barrier with me, George Close, reviewing the Singapore Grand Prix. And we had a terrible television directing performance that meant we didn't get to see an awful lot of the race. We mainly just saw Lando Norris not get past Max Verstappen. Come on to that later. But what we did get was a result that saw McLaren become the Constructors' champions. And well deserved. They've had two very good drivers this year. And they started the year in clearly the best car, maybe save for the odd track here and there. And they've put in the hard work as a team. Where they've come from over the last 10 years of the real lows of McLaren in their history, to under Zach Brown and Andrea Stella coming up to take two Constructors titles in a row, is extraordinary. And it shows you the power of having two good drivers. I think had we seen a capable second driver at Red Bull this year, who had been able to put in performances at least vaguely similar to Max, the championship would very much still be wide open. But it's not. That's what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. But the Constructors' Championship, a bit like Oscar Piastri celebrations, is always muted compared to the Drivers' Championship. And there was a lot to unpick from a driver's perspective as well this weekend. And we're going to start with qualifying. In my notes, I've written, Super George, give him a contract. He is super. He's extraordinarily quick. He's had a very good season. Toto's playing hard to get. All the ex-drivers at Mercedes talk about Toto going cold and trying to air the drivers to get the most from them. The difficulty for George is Mercedes are both his managers and the team, so they're just ironing out a few details. But he's insanely quick. I saw that he celebrated the win, by the way, by recreating the iconic photo that Lewis took in 2018 after the pole and the win. And George, well, he got the pole and the win. It was such a good pole lap. Really good. Mr. Saturday, Mr. Sunday. Hey, maybe could be Mr. Friday as well. That's the least important of the days, isn't it, for a Formula One driver? I guess Monday to Thursday are less important. What else have I got? Deluded Max. The idea that Lando Norris was impeding him there is crazy. I'm not saying there is not turbulent air in that corner, but my God, get a grip. You risk going last over the line, so you know you'll have cars on cool-down laps, but you benefit from rubbering in. He went yo in the first sector. He wasn't good enough to take pole. It was probably there for him had he managed to hook up a lap, but he didn't hook up a lap, and I don't think Lando Norris moving into the pit lane really made any difference. Martin Brundle didn't buy it either. There was a few little people that seemed to buy it initially because it's Max, but nah, not Oscar. And will be remembered. Classic, just old school Max there. Petty child wanting some revenge and vindictiveness because someone's done something to him in his head. He's very quick though, isn't he? He is very quick, but not as quick as George Russell, who, as I've said, I think in a straight head-to-head battle would beat Max Verstappen. Woe Tsunoda, his teammate, qualified 15th, only promoted because of the Williams double disqualification for a DRS infringement. Not what you want. Come on to Carlos, though. He managed to scramble a point for them, didn't he? And just wanted to put a shout out for Hadja, qualified 8th, and Behrman in 9th, who went on to hold that. And again, we can talk a bit more about those drivers later on. But on to the race. Okay, the really important, the start. Piastri v Norris. Straight up a racing incident. I thought at the time, there's a gap. He goes for it. He's fully alongside. He hugs the apex. Goes into the back of Max, who's a bit slow out of the apex. Drifts into Oscar. It's a racing incident. Now, a racing incident does not mean that Oscar doesn't have a point from a team point of view when the whole point is they're not meant to crash. So they shouldn't be risking those moves before the Constructors' Championship is wound up, and the agreement clearly being don't crash into one another, and that did happen. Would they reverse the cars? Because it wasn't really Lando's fault, I think it was hard for McLaren to reverse the cars, and also they've got to win the Constructors' Championship. Our papaya rules was basically don't crash into one another. So does Oscar have a right to be pissed off? I think in the moment, that adrenaline, he can't see the onboards. Of course he is. He's got to ask the question. He's been barged into and lost a position to his championship rival. What I would say is McLaren, with their papaya rules, create this illusion that there isn't a championship battle between the two drivers. And Oscar's sometimes been on the smarter end of that this season, and he sometimes, I think today, was forgetting, listen, it's still to play for. There's not many races to go, and you've got to beat your rival. So maybe close off the inside when you're going into the apex. Word for the wise. So I think a racing incident, I think on balance, fine that he didn't give the place back. I can see why Oscar was annoyed. I mean, he was proving a point probably, but it felt awkward them celebrating on the podium this Constructors' Championship without Oscar there. That wasn't great optics. Okay, what do we got? The race could have been interesting, but we wouldn't know. We had Alonso's pit stop go wrong. I think was probably the next major thing to happen I can recall. And that put him out of position, and we then saw the charge back through a DRS train, and he ended up calling Hadjar the hero of the day because Hadjar, I thought, actually defended pretty well against him for 2 laps. Didn't seem to do anything too bad. He was slow on the straight because of a minor engine problem. And Alonso's problem, quote, was, some battles better not to fight. I think he can grow up. He was annoyed at his slow pit stop and then managed to fight back. But getting grit racing, Bulls and Aston Martin, the championship rivals, I think it's perfectly fair to try and stop Fernando Alonso going on a march and just getting easy points. Thought Hadjar defended very well. Thought there was nothing in that, but fair play to Alonso, managed to get back into the points after that delayed pit stop. But yeah, weird to pick on Hadjar in that moment. After we've all seen Alonso do some incredibly tough defending in positions like that. We then, yeah, again, not much to talk about. Again, because we didn't see much of the race directors. Too busy showing us Charles Leclerc's girlfriend or this battle, Max v Norris. Norris basically just parked on Max's gearbox. I think there was probably more speed for the McLarens. Remember, Max started on the softs, so there was a slight strategy difference between the two cars. But the worry is that Lando, despite being the quicker car, didn't manage to find a way past when it mattered. A concern. But you've got to say that Red Bull is quick and it is equalled out now. The Mercedes was the quickest car at this track. And you saw some good pace from Antonelli as well in different phases on the Grand Prix. You also saw some glimmers of him in qualifying, didn't you? Never felt like he'd be able to put a lap together like George, which is a concern. But he also had good pace in there. And I think now, where McLaren have stopped developing the car, you're seeing the Red Bull, the McLaren, are equal. The Mercedes seems to be better than Ferrari at the moment over the last couple of races. And Ferrari sitting neatly in 4th. Lewis, on the charge though, for Ferrari, maybe the only glimmer of hope. Leclerc said that they were passengers to the car after the race, mainly because of the brakes, both of them really struggling with the brakes. All cars struggle with the heat at Singapore, but he said Ferrari are more effective than the others. Really, let's just hope and pray they have a good car for next year. Hope and pray. But I thought the positive was, I know there was no risk, so it was an open goal. But Ferrari didn't just keep Lewis in no man's land. They pitted him for a softer tyre, and you got to see Lewis do the charge. They were quick by letting him pass Leclerc. They didn't mess around with that, which Ferrari would have done before. And he probably would have got the pass on Antonelli had his brakes not failed. And they failed pretty spectacularly, because we then saw Fernando Alonso hunting him down, but Lewis Hamilton finished 0.4 seconds ahead of Alonso after an utter tirade on the radio. Lewis had cut corners because his brakes weren't working. When you see his onboard, weirdly, it doesn't look like he's cutting corners, but if you watch Fernando's onboard, you really clearly see him cut corners at the end. Curious. And he got given a time penalty. So Alonso did actually finish ahead of Lewis. But overall, I thought that was a positive takeaway for Ferrari. They didn't mess up a strategy call. So maybe we can see that. And that is always a strength, is to pit Lewis onto softs, because he can find time and put in those quali laps like no one else. Hammer time. More Alonso ranting. We've covered that. Sainz. Final shout out to Sainz for his long stint to get to P10. Yeah, went 50 odd laps, didn't he, on his first set of tyres, and managed to cheek a sneaky 10th, all without a safety car as well. No safety cars. And last year, I found out, was the first year that was never even a yellow flag or a safety car in a Formula One race. Okay, some nicer stories for you. Alain Prost took his first title 40 years ago. Michael, 1985, Alain Prost. Could we see George go on to do similar things as he won the race? I think George is that good. Yeah, I think he could get as many titles as Prost in the right car. Come on, Mercedes, let's get it right next year. And another really good news story where Carlos Sainz had put on a kind of cartoon motif on the back of his helmet of Sparkles the Unicorn, which was designed by a fan. Williams have started selling the merchandise, and some of the profits are going to the young girl that gave him the sticker, which is really nice. In fact, I think they're trying to give most of it to I guess she owns the copyright. I think she does. Anyway, we'll find out. Next time, I'll give you an update on Sparkles the Unicorn. Sounds like a plan. So, I will be seeing you out next time, though, for Austin, USA. Yeah, we're going to Austin, Marshall. So, catch you next time. Thanks for listening. Bye.